we are located in Hollywood and we have such deep roots in LA and we have such an affinity for LA brands. But this Hollywood storytelling is really about seeing advertising as entertainment, like something that you don't want to skip, something that feels interesting, different, hopefully makes you feel something.
Welcome to We Built This Brand, the podcast where we talk to the creators and collaborators behind brands and provide you with practical insights that you can use in growing your own business. Today, we're talking with Michelle Fischer, Group Creative Director at Battery, a full-service creative and media advertising agency who has worked with brands like Netflix, Land O'Lakes, and the Anaheim Ducks. As a child of the 90s, I was really excited for this conversation. The Mighty Ducks were a big part of my childhood and inspired me to learn to ice skate, rollerblade, and develop many scraped knees. So when I heard her agency was in charge of their recent rebrand, I knew we'd have a lot to talk about. If you're a kid of the 90s and you love the movie, I think you'll find their process fascinating. We also got to talk about the recent Land O'Lakes campaign, which was a lot of fun as well. That said, I won't hold us back from this interview any longer. Here's my conversation with Michelle Fischer of Battery. All right, Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to be talking to you today, talking about your journey, talking about the agency you work for, Battery, and just diving into that a little more. So where I always like to start these interviews off is just learning a little bit more about how you got to where you are today as a creative director. That's always any leadership position I feel like is a mysterious journey from like starting wherever you started to where you are at now. So give us a little bit of that story, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, talking about mysterious, it all kind of started in college. I was majoring in psychology and communication, and I knew that I wanted to study people's motivations. It's kind of interesting, and persuasion, all of that. And I just remember one day in my dorm room, I was listening to the Real Men of Genius campaign, the radio campaign. And I was like, these are so funny. These are so good. Like, how do people do this? Like, do they get paid for it? I was so curious about it. And after college, I was just trying to get in the door of advertising. I started at an entertainment media company in Venice, and it wasn't quite what I was thinking it would be. So I had a friend who recommended VCU Brand Center, and I applied. I put my job, and I got in, luckily, because I didn't know if I was going to get in or not. And then since then, I started my first copywriting job in Chicago, and got like kind of a really great background there with all the kind of fundamentals, cut my teeth on radio and things like that. And then went to San Francisco and did a lot of digital stuff, and then headed down to LA. Quite a few years at 72 and Sunny, worked on Target a good amount of years, and then freelance at different places.
So coming up through that world, being a writer, doing all that, I love that it started for you with the Real Men of Genius, because that was actually an early creative project that we had at my company. We had a client say, I've got this dumb idea for a parody song of Real Men of Genius. Could you do that for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I ended up cutting like a whole Real Men of Genius campaign, like song, and doing the narrative and the vocals myself.
That's fun.
Yeah. I'll share it with you and the audience after this is over. It was quite ridiculous. It still exists on the internet by some miracle, but that's great. So then you went to, you said the ad center, you went there, and you've moved up since then. So why did you want to move into being a creative director versus copywriting?
It's interesting. I think that when you're going through an advertising agency, you start to see, just a natural progression of experience and everything. And I know people who actually don't want that role. They love to stay in the craft of copywriting, which is great. But what I loved about creative directing was you get to see the brand at a higher level, and you get to shape the look, the voice, the tone of that brand, and help kind of guide it, which I loved that piece of it. And then also solving kind of larger business and organizational challenges that a brand has. I also love working with just the team of, different creative strategists, brand people, and kind of getting them together and kind of seeing what people kind of create on their own. It's pretty great. Yeah, it's kind of magical to see. You're like, oh, I would have never gone there. I would have never gone there with my mind. And to see you to go there, it's really exciting to just kind of witness too, and then guide it.
Yeah, there's something that's really fun about the creative process.
It is. It's like organized chaos, like you just, it's kind of meanders and you never know where it comes from. And then all of a sudden you have it. And it's such an amazing feeling when you do get it.
For sure. And working with a talented team, of course, helps as well. Building that, growing that, of course, is always a challenge. So yeah, that's really cool because that organized chaos comes from somewhere, right?
All right.
So what led you to Battery? How did you get involved there?
It's so interesting. After my last full-time gig after Battery, before Battery, I freelanced at a few different places. And, I was kind of convinced that I was like, I'm going to do this freelance thing for a very long time. It was honestly like a great balance for me because I was a newfound mom. And then I talked to Phil, who's co-founder of Battery. He's the chief creative officer. He chatted with me when I was at my last full-time position. And we just kept on talking. And he was like, come on over and check it out, see for yourself. And I went there because the work was very interesting. I thought the brands were great, but I thought the way that they approached and did the work that they did was very interesting, disruptive. But what made me kind of go full-time over there was how they worked. And I would say, the people there at the time were very, very experienced and had a lot of years. And everyone knew what worked and what didn't work at various places that they've been at and brought that collective knowledge. We talked through what works, what doesn't, we're progress over process, kind of removing all the processes that don't work for us, that don't serve the work. So that's part of it. And then the thing that kind of the unlock for me in my years at Battery was this idea of being a force multiplier. And when I first heard that, I was like, what does that mean? I have no idea. But it's kind of identifying what your superpower is and where you can make the most impact. And then surrounding yourself with people who can do it better than you. I don't know if that makes sense. For example, when I was a senior creative, from briefing, concepting to execution, I would look at every single cast member in an audition and write down why I don't like them, why I like them, do massive explorations on look and feel of all these things. And, we were talking about it and we're like, we have craftspeople to do this for us who know it better than us. We know what we like, we know what moves us, but there are directors, there are editors, there are, all kinds of musicians that can really, they're artists and they're creative and they're problem solvers in their own right. So bringing them in and really empowering them to do what they were meant to do. So that kind of was a huge unlock for me, that I didn't have to do everything. It was this kind of, there's so much better people around you that can do it. And you focus on where you make the most impact.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. As you build anything, like if you limit yourself to you being the hero, then typically you're not going to get very far. The organizations and the people that I've worked with that say, I'm going to be the star and it's only going to be me, unless they have a valid reason for it, typically doesn't work out too well. And I think that that humility that you bring to it, saying, hey, there are people that are better than me. I'm going to rely on them to help me and grow. I think that's a great attitude towards everything, and definitely A good illustration of being a force multiplier. So tell me a little bit about Battery. I mean, you've already told me a little bit just through what you shared, but what kind of clients do you work with, and what type of content and things do you all normally produce?
A lot of our clients, I mean, they kind of span, but I would say throughout the years, we've had a lot of entertainment clients, like Netflix, Hulu. We have had quite a few sports brands. We had Clippers, Angel City FC, and now Anaheim Ducks. And we also have CPG brands, Land O'Lakes, Grand Coromino, and finance. We do RBC and a couple other financial institutions that we've worked in the past. And then also gaming. That's a big one. But I kind of like put that under the umbrella of like entertainment, sports, gaming, entertainment platforms. All of that is, I feel like, under entertainment.
Oh yeah. I'm a big nerd, so big fan of that. And
we can nerd out.
Yeah, can definitely nerd out. I'm sure you've worked with some brands that actually, from looking at your website, I know you've worked with brands that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. And I know people say that, but it's interesting. There's so many creative people out there, and sometimes it's just the right time, right place, and being ready for those moments.
Being prepared with it. And of course, it sounds like you're bringing a good team to the equation as well. So all of that's going to build on itself. That's great. So names are intrinsic to branding. Why the name Battery?
Well, do you want to hear the legend, or you want to hear the reality?
Oh, I'll take both. I love these kind of stories.
Okay. Well, this was obviously before my time, but the legend is that it was inspired by a Metallica song.
Oh, nice.
And it was actually presumed by earlier Japanese clients that Battery had back in the day. And they're like, oh, it's from that Metallica song, right? And then they just never affirmed or denied that. But actually, that song in Metallica is very like sewn in and into the fabric of Battery. If you walk through our office, we've got so many cues of Metallica drums, just all kinds of paraphernalia and cues to Metallica, because of course Phil is a huge fan. But then the reality of it is it was a nickname of Anson Sobey, who was the other co-founder of Battery and the CEO. It was his nickname when he was a kid. And if you ever meet him, you can see why, because he is so energetic.
Yeah. My initial assumption was something to do with energy and excitement. So the latter definitely makes sense.
It's so funny because to this day, well, actually until 2 days ago, when I was like, why are we named Battery? I always just assumed, it's just like you like power something, and that's the origin story of Battery.
It's fascinating. My favorite company name is Mitel, which is a telephone company. You may have heard of them. But the original name comes from two guys named Mike and Terry, and they had a lawn mowing business before they started selling phones. So it was Mike and Terry's Lawn Mowing.
That's really interesting. We've done so many, and I don't know if you have done this too, Chris, like just naming exercises.
Oh, yes.
And it's such a subjective thing. And we even had like origins of other names, like Starbucks, and where that came from. And it's really interesting how names kind of just pop up and become something of its own, and it has its own story and evolution.
Yeah. And I've also seen those naming sessions turn into counseling sessions, because people have opinions and people have ideas, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize we needed to go this deep to find the answer. But that certainly is something I'm very versed in and experienced in. So it's always fun, especially when they've got a great backstory to them. So that's really cool. So the model for Battery is noted as being tried and true brand rigor infused with Hollywood storytelling based on a tech mentality. As a creative director, what does that mean to you and the clients you work with?
I know it's layered, but the way that I see it is, there's a group of us who have come from different walks of experience, and we bring that experience from big brands, and bring that kind of rigor and the and the best practices of each experience and brand that we've been on and bring that to Battery. Hollywood storytelling, it was born because we are located in Hollywood and we have such deep roots in LA and we have such an affinity for LA brands. But this Hollywood storytelling is really about seeing advertising as entertainment, like something that you don't want to skip, something that feels interesting, different, hopefully makes you feel something. And it makes a lot of sense with all the brands that we do have.
Yeah, for sure.
In entertainment.
And what about that tech mentality? Like, where does that play into this?
That's really about just iterating and collaborating, doing that, like sharing work often and quickly. And we rarely show anything that's fully done, packaged up. Here it is. We show it in early stages. We really like to work with our partners, our client partners, going through what's working, what's not. We're not really precious about anything at all. We really try to listen before speaking and just iterate. A lot of prototyping.
Yeah. Iterative processes are the best, especially when you get the client on board with it and they understand what the process is. Nothing worse than going to a client with a final product or something labeled final because it's going to come back labeled final -1, -2, and so on.
-3.
Yeah.
Option 6B,
I've actually made it a principle at our company that we don't label anything final until it's actually complete and in the can.
Right. And, because culture is moving so quickly, you plan something out fully a year ahead, especially for big brands. They do need that planning ahead of time. But to have everything packaged up with such a long lead time, it just doesn't work because culture is so ephemeral. Things move so fast these days that, you could talk about it within weeks. It's stale or old or, all those things, especially in social.
Yeah. It's hard to stay on top of that culture. It does seem like it changes quite a bit with trends and all that. You think you're going to do something fun, and then a year later, it might be something completely different that you're targeting towards. So let's talk a little bit about some of the brands you've worked with. One of those is the Anaheim Ducks. And as a kid of the 90s, I grew up watching the Mighty Ducks. So I saw that on your client list. It was like, we have to talk about the Ducks.
Yes.
So tell me more about that campaign and how you got, how you worked with them.
Of course. And I'm so glad you mentioned that you're familiar with the Mighty Ducks. I mean, that's, it's a SoCal team, but what's really unique about this NHL team is that it started in Disney and it started as a movie and it turned into a real team. And a lot of the nation and globally, actually, there's a lot of Ducks fans globally. They were brought up on this movie and there's such a strong connection with them, with Disney. And with that actually came with its own kinds of perception of it being this kind of, kid-friendly, non-aggressive kind of hockey team. And they really changed. I think they kind of shed that perception a bit once they won the Stanley Cup in 2007. And, there was also, too, there was a handful of years where they like made it to the Western Conference, like championships. And, they were a very notable name in its own right in the NHL. But in recent years, I think up until 2018, they were like really, really competitive. And then they came to us at a really interesting time for them. They were on the onset of rebranding themselves. I don't know if you follow hockey or not, but I didn't actually. I got just really geeking into it. So the Ducks, they were going through a rebrand with the logo, and they were creating this amazing kind of mixed use space around it with entertainment, restaurants, that kind of thing. And then they were also in a rebuild period. So they have a really young team that is, they're coaching and developing. They really want to reinvigorate fandom, the fans, and get people into the arena, Honda Center. And it's really challenging when you have a team that's rebuilding and the players. And that was the challenge. It was to get these fans excited for all the foundational things that they're making, like with the in-game experience, that new complex I was telling you about, and then the rebrand, which so many fans like completely loved. They returned back to that like masked duck face versus the web. Yeah. I mean, it's so iconic too. It's also like has the heritage from the movies as well.
Yeah, it's a good throwback. Yeah. And then I noticed the color selection for this rebrand was heavy on orange, as opposed to the purple and green that maybe we're more familiar with. So what led to that color change? I'm sure that was probably a much more lengthy discussion than most people would assume.
Fans were very much in love with their purple and teal, but one of the things that the organization really wanted to lean into is their loyalty and love for Orange County. And Orange County is known for their oranges, like their history is in like orange groves. So they really leaned into that color, and they knew there was going to be a lot of kind of pushback from fans, but they boldly and, with pride went with orange.
Yeah, it's definitely a good call. So what has been the response then? You said you were anticipating some pushback, but how has it been received?
Oh, well, you know what? Maybe I can kind of take a step back about what like Battery was kind of partnered to do here. So they had these kind of pieces in place, but with the big task of reinvigorating the fans and the players being kind of subject to change all the time. Like we couldn't lean into the players and the team. So the challenge to us was, how do we bring back pride fandom to our fan base? And we're like, Orange County is where it's at. Like, I'm actually from Orange County. I grew up there. I spent my weekends in Compton, but lived in Orange County. And with that, and I know that like the residents of Orange County, there's such a diverse population of people. But then people from the outside don't really know that. Orange County is often kind of labeled with, kind of like dated stereotypes of like the Real Housewives of Orange County, Laguna Beach, when that was a thing, beautiful beaches, very cush lifestyle, one note type of people. And Orange County is very, very, very different from that. And we want to lean into that and kind of fight off stereotypes and bring this kind of more edgy, gritty persona to the Ducks. So we had this platform line called "You're Entering Orange Country." And that was our kind of brand platform to kind of set off bringing back fandom, not just core fans, but people from Orange County who could relate to this and say, yes, we are Orange County. There's a lot of things to be proud of there.
Want to launch a podcast without the hassle? HumblePod makes podcasting easy. From concept to launch, we'll help you create a professional, engaging show. Already have a podcast? We handle editing, show notes, transcriptions, and even video production, so you can focus on your content. With our tailored services, you get high-quality production, seamless publishing, and expert support at every step. Whether you're starting fresh or leveling up, HumblePod ensures your podcast sounds amazing and reaches the right audience. Visit HumblePod.com to get started today. So then, so then I guess you all were part of the digital piece of that. What other pieces of that campaign were you all handling?
Well, it was kind of a bit of a rebrand and focusing the communications around the fans. So we did digital. We just came out with like a tourism campaign, which is this kind of nice twist of come visit Orange Country, which is this kind of like darker, like grittier version of what you would see as an Orange County personas. We have like ads at the Orange County airport that have like a twist on a tourism campaign, but everything's kind of dark. We've done film. We're doing a bunch of social films for them. It's in arena, and we're just finding different ways of bringing that to life.
That's exciting. I noticed when I watched the video for Welcome to Orange Country, it was very much what you said. The darker, the grittier, the more intense. It definitely had an air of excitement about this new brand and being the Anaheim Ducks. And I'll be honest with you, like, it's the first time I realized, because this is my memory is The Mighty Ducks, the movie, which does not take place from what I recall in California, at least the first one. And so my brain is set on like, oh, they're in Anaheim, California. Oh, and now it all makes sense. I feel like for the first time I actually had a place, if that makes sense, as an outsider, a sense of place for where the Ducks are and their community around the Ducks. So I think by that measure, my own measure, it was successful in establishing those things you're trying to establish. That's
really great to hear. I love that you got a sense of place from the work, because there's Ducks fans all around the world. And as we've also been thinking about too, like, what is Orange Country? Is it just Orange County, or is Orange Country around the world? And we've kind of figured out it's around the world. It's wherever a Ducks fan is.
That's really neat. That'll be phase 2 of the campaign, right? Orange Country all over the world.
It's already out a little bit in social, which is great. Yeah, we're like highlighting people from like Sweden and, all different places. So,
well, cool. Well, like I said, I've loved it. Thought it was really cool. I was curious. I noticed in the video that I watched, which I think was the one on your page with the case study for it, but the video had them giving a guy a tattoo. Was he actually getting a new Ducks tattoo for the shoot?
No. It was.
Sometimes you get a dedicated fan.
Although we have had that idea. We've had that idea. We're like, show us how loyal of a Orange Country fan you are. But it's to highlight local residents of Orange Country.
As far as other brands that you all have worked with, you mentioned Land O'Lakes. And I know, I think very recently you have released a campaign around reclaiming farmcore. And first of all, can you please tell me what farmcore is? Because in my head, I know of this. I just discovered this DJ named DJ Horse Girl. And that's the only reference to farmcore that I know, is what she talks about. And I'm like, I don't know that that's it. So please tell me what it is.
Oh, well, farmcore is it's both a fashion style and a lifestyle aesthetic. It references a farm-inspired lifestyle, and that also includes workwear. So stuff that farmers wear on the farm, you see that out on the streets, and streetwear on the runway. There was this like one thing that just posted up on InStyle of barn jackets coming back in style. That the core piece of it is really interesting, because that's been a part of social where it's like norm core, cottage core, farm. It's like anything core. But it's really like referencing that look and that lifestyle, a simpler time too.
What was the focus of this campaign, and what was your all's role in it?
So Land O'Lakes this year really wanted to highlight the impact that farmer owners make, because Land O'Lakes is actually a farmer owned co-op. It's not owned by like, faceless, like big corporation. It's actually owned by 1,000+ farmer owners. And they make real impact in their communities and the nation at large. And we really want to highlight those stories. Now, the challenging thing in the world that we live in with social is that, and just like advertising media, is that you have to kind of capture someone's attention and really get them to listen. And what we kind of noticed and listened in in culture is this kind of uprising of farmcore and farm living. I mean, you see it in, like Beyonce came out with a country album, TV shows, all of that kind of like nodding to farm life. So, and then we also saw it on the streets. So we were thinking, okay, how do we share these stories in a way that people will pay attention to? And we taught, and then we noticed there's this great connection between our farmer owners and the clothes that they wear and that being out on the streets. So what we did was we stitched each individual story of impact on an actual piece of clothing one of our farmers wore and showcased them in a fashion show during Paris Fashion Week, but in Paris, Wisconsin. So
I love that. I live in East Tennessee. So for me, like the farmcore thing, I'm like, it's just my neighbors. Like, I mean, I'm not that far removed from civilization. I am in downtown of my city right now, but here in Knoxville, but yeah, I definitely, it's an interesting trend to see happening. Pop stars like Beyonce and Post Malone, I think, did an album, and even Young Gravy did, if you know who that is. I think he did it more as a joke than anything. His whole comedy persona is kind of that, but yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and I love the idea of using that to bring attention to the these individuals and these people that are part of that story of Land O'Lakes. So that's really neat.
Right. The message that we try to get across with each piece of work that we brought out was, farmcore, it's not just an aesthetic, it's a way of life for these farmer owners. So it's not just a fashion trend to them. They do it day in, day out in those clothes.
Always curious to know, getting towards the end, but I always want to know, like, from you working in the creative world, mm-hmm. especially out in Hollywood and LA and in California in general, like, what is top of mind for you in the industry right now? Like, what things are going on that you all are factoring into new projects and, maybe some of these bigger client projects that you're working on?
It's really interesting. And it's not a surprise, but more and more of our partners and our clients are looking for not traditional advertising, they're looking at through the lens of, how people are consuming media these days. And it's all really social, a lot of it is social. A lot of it is experiential. And that's really exciting. I think that all of us, it's not just Gen Z or Generation Alpha. When they look in social, when it looks like an ad, you skip it right away. It's only when it feels really native and authentic, people pay attention. So that's where I feel like we're all headed, and our brands are wanting, and more experiences rather than selling.
And I think it sounds like from the case studies you have here and that we've talked about today, I mean, that very much shows through, and giving people an experience or doing something that has a tangible piece of the campaign that you can take home with you, and that people want to engage with. That's definitely makes sense. What do you think the future of the business looks like in the next 1 to 5 years for Battery, for maybe just the advertising world in general?
I mean, I think that's kind of where we're headed. For me personally, we're always trying to find new ways of really compelling and engaging the consumer, and bringing value to their life. And I think that it's interesting. I always struggle between being disruptive and being additive, if that makes sense. Are we helping them do something better, or are we bringing kind of like contrasting thought, which also I think has a place as well. So I always kind of think through what is the best kind of method for a brand and how does it serve that brand. And it's different for different brands. Like, Anaheim Ducks is different from Land O'Lakes.
Yeah, I think that, again, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely seeing that contrast too, because there's the experiential side of things I'm seeing now. And then I see brands like Nutter Butter that are doing these just insane out there campaigns that interrupts your pattern of thought, maybe even your TikTok flow as you're, swiping away in the night, and just leaves you with a disturbing image of peanut butter.
I know some of them are not suitable before you go to bed. I'm so glad you brought up Nutter Butter, though, because that also has been, a topic of conversation within our teams. And, it's always about like what feels right for the brand. But I will say they've gotten noticed for sure if we're all talking about it.
Yeah, their advertising campaign has definitely haunted my it's like my childhood coming back to haunt me, because I remember Nutter Butters being big when I was a kid, and then I hadn't thought about them in years until this campaign, and I'm like, well, success, they did it. It's disturbing, but they did it. Anyways, okay, well, last question I always like to ask before we go is, what brand do you admire the most right now?
Oh gosh, God, there's so many. I like to take cues from different brands, but the first one is a bit obscure, but I love their approach, and it's called the Rochambeau Club. And they're only online, and most of their marketing is just on social. They're a rosé company, but they have kind of created this world, and I love this example as a world building brand. They've created a completely fictional, I think it's like the Swiss Alps country club, racquetball club, exclusive club, and they give you a peek into what that lifestyle is like just in their social. And all of it is, at least to my understanding, is all fictional. It's all made up. But they've created such a unique world just virtually, which I think is so interesting. Another brand that does that is Vacation Inc., which is a sunblock brand that has basically taken you into a time machine back to the 80s and 90s of what beaches and the life looked like back then. So that's one brand that I think we learned a lot of lessons from. And then the second one is, I love what McDonald's is doing with WickDonald's. It's a anime inspired McDonald's restaurant, tapping into the anime culture, and it already existing in anime culture, and they just brought it to life.
Yeah, I need to dig more into that campaign, because I saw some of it, and at first I was like, what is this? And then realized, oh, this is geared towards Japanese art and things like that. So yeah, as a nerd, that fascinates me. So I need to go check that out more. Those are great. And Rochambeau. So tell me a little bit more about this Rochambeau Club. So it's not real. Like, is there anything behind it? Like, what do you pay for something?
I think they sell rosé. They sell different wines. Yeah. And they make their house rosé and wines available to the public at very exclusive times. It's really just world building in the virtual world and creating a lifestyle. They have like fake collaborations with different brands. They have, photos of people on the racquetball court, but naked. And like, it's just kind of a wild kind of world that they've built and created, and a voice too, a look and a voice.
Mm-hmm. You had to apply for membership, apparently. They're partnering with Tennis Club International, and man, this is great. Sorry, I looked them up because I'm very fascinated by this. I went to Switzerland last year for the first time, and it was fantastic. And so when you said the Alps, I was like, ooh, I got to check this out.
Yeah, it's like when you see it, you're like, I don't know what this is, but I want in.
They've got their menu as their wines. Okay, yeah, I'm loving this. I'm digging this. This is great.
I find world building fascinating, and I love it. And that's taking a cue from entertainment as well,
Yeah, because like movies will always have these other things that go outside of the movie to engage the audience in some new and interesting way. this is a throwback to college, but like when Halo 2, I think it was when Halo 2 came out, they came out with the I Love Bees campaign. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I Love Bees. That was the name of the campaign. If you've not seen it, you should check it out. It's a alternate reality game that they came up with. And the end result was you ended up in Chicago playing and testing their first ever online play Halo. And that was the big deal. So like you followed this whole storyline. There were actors involved. It like puts you in a movie to be a part of the game and to follow this whole mystery that they created, this whole breadcrumb trail of mysteries and questions. So yeah, it was fascinating. And I had a roommate that almost went up there. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to go do it." And I was like, "Okay, good luck. Have fun skipping class."
Those are the experiences that are so interesting to me because they're so immersive. They really make, have you dive deep into that world. And
yeah, if you like these folks, you would probably really like poolside.fm. Very much in that 90s theme, like their website. If it's still, I hope it's still up. This is one I don't know what they do outside of just a brand to sell apparel, I think is all they do. Yeah, if you just go to, it's poolsuite.net. They've got a whole thing. Yeah, poolside.fm, poolsuite.net. Yeah, you'll love it.
Oh my gosh. I love just how the site lodes.
And they've got a web music player. You can change the backgrounds. The nostalgia is real with this one. I think you'll love it.
Oh, this is so great. I love this.
Very lo-fi. That's a great way to put it. It's very much their vibe. And they've got social media and all that. And I just kind of discovered them on a whim. And I like having ambient music in the background when I work. So this was what I'll go to from time to time. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Can't wait to explore it. Yeah, the world building aspect is so great. I think that that's what we're also trying to do for Orange Country, because it is a country after all. Many things you can do in a country. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, it's been great having you on today. Really enjoyed our time. Where can people connect with you and how can they connect with Battery?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to Battery's website at batteryagency.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, Michelle, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of We Built This Brand. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on your player of choice. You can also keep up with the podcast at our website at webuiltthisbrand.com. If you like this episode, please give the podcast a 5-star review and make sure to tell all your friends about it so we can continue to build this brand.